We are now live, so everybody will start coming in.
Yep, they are already coming in.
Yep, here they come.
Someone has their hand raised.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if they're saying hello or if they need to
Hi.
ask a question. If you needed to ask a question and want to put that in the Q&A, please don't hesitate to do so for us. We will get started in just a few minutes or just a few seconds or so.
Okay, all right. I think we can get started, right? Is that good?
Sure.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alfonso Obuehi, and I'm the Dean of the School of Business at Stockton University. This is the second event in the Dean's Black History Month Executive Speaker Program. Today, it's our incredible privilege to welcome Kofi Kondwa as the speaker for today's event. Uh, Kofi Kondwa is founder and CEO of Regal Software. This is a fintech company that's based in Atlanta, Georgia. Kofi founded Regal Software in 2008 to solve major problems for banks and organizations attempting to work together on payments and treasury integration. And I won't bore you with all the little nitty gritties because I'm sure he can probably tell a better story. So let's give a rousing Stockton welcome to Kofi Kondwa.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alfonso. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, great, wonderful. So we'll kick it off with some questions, and then afterwards we'll allow the audience to chime in with their own questions. We have some students, faculty, staff, and folks from the community who are here today to join us. Um, so once again, Kofi, welcome. Could you please maybe kind of share with us and give us a brief overview of Regal Software?
Yeah, absolutely, Alfonso. And as I mentioned, it's a pleasure to be here. I think we've had a professional relationship over the past few years or so. I'll tell the story about how we met some other time. But in regards to Regal Software, we're a financial technology provider, commonly known in today's lingo as a fintech. We provide innovative software that connects major banks and financial institutions to their corporate clients, through just integrating their accounting system to the bank's treasury platform. So to put it simply, we make it easy for banks and corporate customers to work together. What might be surprising to you is that you as students, if you go out to dinner well, this is before COVID, if you went out to dinner with your friends, you could easily pull out your cell phone and Cash App or something like that, and pay your friends back for what you owe them. For larger companies, that's not the case. They're dealing with just large volumes of payments to suppliers and vendors, and they have an accounting system that really was designed to spit out a check, and perhaps it can do an ACH. There's so many different payment rails today, so Regal just makes it as simple as you paying your friend with a Cash App for the banks and large institutions. We're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, where I sit today. I just sit just north of there in Alpharetta, Georgia. We have locations in Bengaluru, or Bangalore, India, as it's more commonly known. And then recently got acquired by a company, Mineral Tree in Boston. So we have a Boston location and a sister company in Redwood City, California. So our product today is used by over 1,500 corporate customers, as well as financial institutions, major institutions like Wells Fargo, US Bank, American Express, MasterCard, and the like all leverage Regal Pay to support corporate payments for their corporate clients.
Okay, great, terrific, thank you. Obviously, as you prefaced earlier, we've known each other for some time. We go back years, and so tell us a little bit about, your background. Obviously, I don't think you were born in New York City. Correct me if I'm wrong. So tell us about your background. Did your parents, your upbringing, just for the audience's information.
Yeah, so I was actually born in Ghana, which is in West Africa. So as most people might or might not know, Kofi just means Asama Khan, and Kofi means male, and I was born on Friday. It's sort of a, Friday facts, if you will, a bit of trivia. So growing up in Ghana in the mid to late 1970s, early 80s was quite interesting. You had a very happy, fulfilling life and extreme hardship all coexisting in a way that I've come to appreciate. Of course, our parents placed a very high premium on perseverance, education, and innovation. And I'll talk about the innovation bit in a minute. But the infrastructure was not what it is here in the US today. In fact, it was quite lacking. Electricity and running water were scarce, and just walking a mile just to find a neighbor whose water happened to be running that day was not unusual, and carrying it back in a bucket or something to that effect. So innovation was more of a necessity, and you found that all around you. Anywhere from retrofitting a common wheelbarrow and just retrofitting it in a way that it could carry gallons of water, so you didn't have to carry it by hand, was an example. As kids, as part of that innovation, we built intricate working toy cars and trucks from just recycled milk cans and sardine cans that had been discarded. And of course, playing soccer with a rolled up sock was also not uncommon, such as it was. But so conditions were tough, but we adapted and we enjoyed life while we focused on our education and the hard work that it was going to take to succeed. The message from our parents, though, was, again, just the hard work, the perseverance, and just innovating and adapting. It's still valid today, even though it's a different place and time, So in other words, when things get tough, find a different way forward, but just by all means, never quit, never surrender that goal. The environment was not ideal. We couldn't change that. And that was not our focus. What we could do was work hard and innovate and find different ways to get on. And so that's what we did. And I draw from that upbringing to this day. As far as worldview goes, through my parents' work as diplomats, I came into contact through travel and meeting people from different corners of the world. And I came to realize early on that you really needed to treat others based on who they are and not where they come from. And that might sound a bit cliché, but you get to learn that as you meet people. And you learn that rejecting or indeed accepting someone into your circle simply based on origin can be a mistake, positive or otherwise.
Okay, good, wonderful. You know, obviously you've come a long way from Ghana to become very successful entrepreneur. Would you share with the audience a little bit about what you credit to exposing you to this entrepreneurial kind of environment that allowed you, that gave you the support to get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I think looking back today, I think I always sort of had that in me, but there might be a couple of call outs that I can kind of think of. And if I were to pick one, I would, I would have to credit my grandmother, because I know as kids, we all got into things. I remember selling homemade, blackberry ice cream to classmates after school and things like that. So I always sort of had it in me. But again, if I had to pick, my grandmother, may she rest in peace, was who I would credit. So she was a local baker in town. As far as I could tell, she never held a formal job in her life, but did quite well. And not only financially, but she was sort of the anchor in the family and in the community as well. She supplied baked goods to local restaurants, hotels, and the like. So if you walked into her compound back then, it still stands today, but not functional. But there were several large clay ovens, and some of you may not know what that is, but they look like. And Alfonso's laughing, so you probably know what that is. But so they look like igloos, right? But they're made from clay, and then you essentially put firewood in there, and then there's a method as to how you control the temperature with more or less firewood, and that's essentially an oven. It's essentially homemade commercial ovens, and that's kind of how things were back in the 1950s. So this picture walking into just a large compound with several large clay igloos, if you would, and by igloo, of course, we have younger folks, so that I don't mean the kind you buy from Home Depot, but the the actual Eskimo igloo. So that's what they look like. And so you walked in there, you would see, several employees just, sourcing flour, kneading dough, baking bread. And any time I was there, I remember her getting up at 5 a.m. and insisting that we all, without fail, also get up at 5 a.m. And she was always telling us not to wait for others to make work for us, right? And so never rely on others to feed you, she would say. So bake your own bread and you'll never go hungry. And that's something that's been very inspirational. And I still remember it to this day, and it's been an inspiration.
Okay, wonderful. I think at this time, it's probably good for the audience to get to know more about the other participants, the other speakers that you are seeing right now on the screen. I guess that be to my right, Tara Mash. Tara, maybe a good chance to formally introduce yourself to the group.
Yeah, for those that don't know me, I'm Tara Marsh. I am a proud alumni of Stockton, twice over with my undergrad as well as my MBA. I worked in the industry for a number of years in the hospitality industry as an event planner in Atlantic City and in New York. And I've had the opportunity now for the last 5 years to work for the hospitality program, specifically helping the students with their required internship for the program. And then, of course, supporting you and Esther in our endeavors for these great events with speakers such as Kofi. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And our Assistant Dean, Esther Lawrence.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good evening. Thank you all for coming. Esther Lawrence, the Assistant Dean in the School of Business. Happy to be here and happy to have Kofi with us, as well as our representative from the African Student Association, Andy. Thank you.
Yeah, great, thank you. And Andy, it's your turn to introduce yourself, and we'll give you the honors to pose the next question to Kofi.
All right, thank you for having me. My name is Andy Prempa. I am a health science major, a senior here at Stockton University, as well as the president of the African Student Organization. It is a club that we spread cultural awareness and political awareness, economical awareness, and bringing the world of Africa to Stockton. So for our next question, what were the challenges you encountered working in the corporate world before starting your own business?
You are on mute, Kofi.
Yeah, how about now? Am I on this frequency? Yeah, excellent. So the main challenge, which isn't necessarily bad, just a function of the size of some of these organizations, it's just how long it takes to innovate in large organizations. So for folks like myself that like to just sort of challenge the status quo and sort of always looking to improve, it just then becomes difficult to do that in a large organization, just as a mid to lower level employee. So, you know, when I then stepped out of that and had the controls of my own business, you know, I could pivot on a dime and innovate at a very fast pace, and that's been rather helpful. Um, but you know, I also learned some important lessons. It wasn't all about challenges in corporate America. One big thing I learned in being in corporate that I didn't learn in school, and I wish I did, was that, you know, your network of people is often more important than your credentials, because as you know, there are tons of universities in the U.S., right? And you know, most places you go, you know, if you look to your left, you look to your right, everybody there also has, you know, similar or better education than you. So your education is important, but your network of people becomes extremely important. And in the context of a corporate environment, it's not just your employees, but you know, the vendors that work with you, and the customers that you're servicing. Um, don't view them as just people that are strictly in that role as a vendor or a supplier or a consultant or what have you. They're individuals that if you build actual, you know, network, you know, build, you know, sort of an actual working or professional relationship with them, it becomes useful down the road, right? Because as you know, your education, you know, it's the key. You learn a lot in school, but it's just you know, just a license to go learn more, right? So um, so again, obviously, large company, difficult to pivot. That was one thing, but I also learned that you know, just learning to sort of network with people goes a long way, which is something I wish I'd learned in school, but I ended up learning it while I was, you know, in the working environment.
Okay, go ahead, Andy. Okay.
All right, next question. What made you realize that you could provide a product like Regal Pay to businesses?
What happened was that, you know, I worked as an accountant in a past life, and so and as a corporate controller as well. So I was quite familiar with the challenges of, you know, that corporate accounting departments, you know, face as they're, you know, processing invoices and cutting checks, et cetera. So paying their vendors is often a manual process, as I mentioned, not as quick as using a cash app. You know, so you enter invoices, you print checks, you sign them, you stuff envelopes, you put stamps on the envelopes, you mail them, etc. And then banks along the way came up with a solution for this where the customer could somehow get them a payment file and kind of work that way. The problem was that accounting systems were great, banking systems were great, but the two just didn't talk to each other. The two meaning the two systems didn't talk to each other. So that was sort of the genesis of my, you know, my company. And so I set about designing the first integration between accounting systems and bank platforms, and it started with just one accounting system and one bank. And from there, we just grew. Today, we have over 160 accounting systems, and over 10 major banks and financial institutions are working with us.
All right, next question. As an entrepreneur, not regarding to the corporate world, what were the challenges you had to overcome and the lessons you learned?
Right. So I think we covered that already, but again, I can kind of go over it real briefly. So the main challenge, again, as I think about it, is that large companies it's hard to make changes, right? It's hard to pivot, and so and it's not necessarily bad. It's just a function of how large organizations are, and so. Um, you know, when I stepped out of that, it was very easy to pivot on a dime and innovate because I didn't have that large overarching just entity that sort of controlled everything you did. And then I also talked about just the value of, you know, your network, your human network, because essentially that's, you know, that's what gets you, you know, to the next level. But funding, right? Funding was definitely a big challenge. So that's something you have to be prepared for because, you know, as you know, it requires money to run a business or start a business, and you also have to be prepared to wear many hats in the first few years. You'll not have the funding to hire as many people as you want. I remember, you know, as I spoke to some of my former colleagues about, you know, the challenges I was having with one thing or another, they were very quick to say, well, you know, just hire more people. And then I had to quickly remind them, well, actually, you know, it takes money to hire people. And if you're a small business, you couldn't just, if you could just hire as many people as you wanted, then, you know, problem solved. But because funding is often scarce, you know, you would have to just essentially wear many hats. And also, another thing I learned was to be very selective about the opportunities that you pursue, because once you open up shop, surely enough, many people will approach you with dozens of business ideas. They want you to pursue this, they want you to pursue that, they want you to invest in this or the other. So filtering out what is relevant to what you're doing and making sure that you're not trying to take on just because somebody brought you the opportunity, you just want to go jump to this, that, and the other. Before you know it, you're chasing 10 different things. And that's just isn't scalable. Focus on the thing you're doing and just push off any new opportunities to the side until you have, you know, just ample time to deal with it because the main focus of what you're doing is your business. You know, time is a precious commodity, so choose, you know, what you spend your time on very wisely. Another thing I learned, not to be too long-winded about this, is that, of course, I mentioned, you know, focusing on what you're doing professionally, but I also learned that opening yourself up to different experiences can challenge you and help you move forward in the, you know, the core thing you're doing. And as an example, so the same year that I founded Regal, I also started training to become a pilot. And so, you know, my friends and family were like, well, why do you want to, you know, if you just started this business, it's very time consuming. Why do you want to go do something else? Well, what I found was that when you sort of get locked into the business, it takes tons of hours. And then on the weekend, to have your mind switch off to do something else is invaluable. And the confidence that it gives you to go, you know, learn how to play a guitar or learn how to like just do something different that you weren't doing before gives you that confidence to focus in back on what you're doing. So I can tell you the confidence that being able to fly a plane gave me, even though it was unrelated to my business, gave me all the confidence that I needed to sort of move forward.
Yeah, wonderful. You know, as you know, this is Black History Month, Kofi, and as educators, we are ever mindful about the societal pressures that exist today in the United States. So, um, thinking back over the years, you know, as a successful African American business person, what advice would you give young people, whether it's Andy or whoever else, on you know on what to do or how to go about preparing themselves to becoming the next Kofi Kondua, shall we say?
Well, first of all, I think one of me is enough, so I hope they become, they become much better than me. You definitely want to strive to become much better than me because we all stand, you know, we just all observe what somebody's doing and then we strive to be better than that. Because, you know, especially, you know, I mentioned growing up in a time and a place that's quite different than what it is today. Our opportunities today are orders of magnitude more than it was when we were coming up, certainly, right? And that doesn't mean there aren't any challenges, but the opportunities are there. So be better than me. You have the time, the time because you're relatively young, younger relative to us. You know, I don't know how the screen looks on your screen, but if I look left to right, I look at Andy, I look at me, I look at my hair. That's the before and after, right? So, you know, you have the time, you have the talent, certainly, and the passion. So put it together and shoot for your dreams. There will be challenges for sure. Some challenges, folks, are unique to who we are as a minority. That's, you know, undeniable. But do not view those challenges as a showstopper. Just view those challenges as just another obstacle to overcome, right? So if you're starting a business, I mentioned all the obstacles that I had to overcome. If you're a minority, there will be some additional obstacles that no need to mention now, but there will be obstacles that you will have to overcome as a minority. But again, they are as they are. I think of it as when I spoke earlier about waking up and not having electricity or not having water, those were just challenges. So the obstacles you face as a minority is also one of those challenges. So don't view it as a limiting factor, right? Just view it as an obstacle to overcome. Of course, society as a whole, we strive to be better. We strive for society to improve year over year with, you know, civil rights, et cetera, and opportunities for minorities, but it will never get to a point where everything is perfect. And so, and of course, those that are not minorities will also face other challenges, right? And so different from ours, but, you know, they'll face challenges as well. And so don't view it as a limiting factor, right? Just view it as, okay, here's an obstacle. How do I overcome it? And then I'll overcome it and then move on, right? And then turn around and pull others up behind you. So back to what I said before, it's hard work, perseverance, and innovation. And by innovation, meaning you don't have to build the iPhone. It's basically, well, of course, it's great if you build an iPhone, but more so on a day-to-day basis, if you hit an obstacle, just figure out an innovative way to get underneath it, above it, around it, through it, however you do it. Don't let it stop you. You've come this far, you know what you know. You are standing on the shoulders of giants who look like you. They have come before you. And so who's going to stop you? Only you can stop you. And so, yeah, go make it happen.
Yeah, wonderful. I want to follow up on something you said earlier on, Kofi, about the value of networking, you know. Speak for a moment about what you will recommend, what you would suggest to the students to really achieve that networking that you spoke about. You know, how do they build
Yes.
a network? What kinds of steps can they take while they are in school, certainly preparing them for the job market?
It's very simple. Talk to people. Just talk to people. And that sounds quite simplistic. You know, in every sort of situation you run into, you talk to people. I'll give an example. I was flying, so I have family in England. I flew with my son to a family wedding, and we were flying back. And so we're on Delta Airlines flying from London to Atlanta. So it's quite a long flight. So I get up and I'm walking down the aisle, stretching. So I got to the back, and there was a gentleman standing in the back, and we got to speaking. And of course, there are lots of people. Some spoke, some didn't. We got to speaking, and we spoke about, you know, where we were going, how we enjoyed the trip to London, and what we were doing, what kind of work we did. And we came to realize we had some common goals. And so he sent me an invitation, and I actually joined the board of advisors for the university that he happened to be the dean of. If you look to your right, it was actually Alfonso. That's how I met him, just through networking, right? On the back of a plane, you know, just stretching our legs. And so I could have just stood there quietly and said nothing. and then I wouldn't be here talking to you 7 years later, right? So it's just talk to people. Doesn't mean that everyone you talk to or speak with will somehow, be beneficial. Some will, some won't. You just talk to them. Indeed, there are times when you'll be beneficial to them, right? And so it's a mutual thing, right? So obviously go to events and talk to people. I remember back, I went to City University of New York, just north of you guys. And I remember coming out of school, we had a quote unquote networking event. And I walked in there and then it was sort of the wrong way to network because all it was everybody sort of, hey, what do you do? Where do you work? Are you hiring? Right? That's not networking, right? That's just you asking somebody for a job. And they don't know you. They met you 10 seconds ago. Why do they want to hire you? Right? So what you do is talk to people, get to know what they do, what they like, common interest. Do they like, do they like music? What kind of music they like? Do they like cars? Do they, are they motorcycle enthusiasts? So what kind of books do they read? Right? So just talk to people, and one, you learn a lot. And in talking to people, you become interesting to them. They become interesting to you. And when opportunities arise, you have a network of people. It used to be a Rolodex, but today it's a cell phone. Today, if there's any sort of thing I'm trying to think of, I'll look through my thing and oh, she knows blah blah blah, or he knows whatever. So it's very simply talk to people, right? So and it's an exercise when you're in the supermarket, when you're um, you know, when you're at church, if you're religious, or a mosque, or wherever it is, just talk to people when you're in the park. And obviously, when you're in a business setting, so you're going to an interview, you get into an elevator, somebody walks in there with you, you just talk to them, just good afternoon, good evening. And you'll know, right? There's some people you say good afternoon, they'll just turn away and then you just leave them alone. And then others will say hello back, and there's a back and forth. But I just don't want to belabor the point. I think it's just all about talking to people, and not in a sort of disingenuous way as to talk to them and say, hey, where do you work? Can you hire me? Kind of thing, right? It's just talking to them, getting to know them, and it's a long process, and then it bears fruit for sure.
Yeah, great. I think at this stage, Andy, I know your group. I'm sure you guys may have some questions. Go ahead.
So, as an entrepreneur, how did you handle adversity and doubt towards it?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Adversity and doubt. Like, do you have any doubts being an entrepreneur, or like starting off like the whole process of it?
Yeah, I was asking, what is that?
Oh, like
It just isn't. It's not a thing, right? It becomes a thing if you make it a thing, right? That it becomes a thing when you make it a thing. You can basically talk yourself into not doing something, right? And I was just being facetious, but it happens to all of us where, you say, oh, wow, you're going to do something. And somehow in the back of your mind, you're going, and I'll give you an example. I was sitting at one of they're actually out of downtown Manhattan, one of the big card producers. I won't use their name, but they actually offered me a job when I left university undergrad back in however long ago, 92. And I turned it down to go do something else because it was paying more, whatever it is. So fast forward 2015-ish, I'm sitting in a conference room, and the company that had tried to hire me, I went somewhere else, is now trying to license my software. So now they want to pay me for my software. And then something in the back of my mind goes, gosh, why do they want to pay me for this? I sat in a coffee shop and did this. Is it worth that much? So, and then the guy actually made an offer to me that he thought was low, but then I thought was high, right? Because then you realize it's all about, he was placing more value on what I did than I was placing value on what I did. We have a tendency to just undervalue what we do. And so everything you do it's of value. And so, the first thing to do is to just mind switch, right? To say, okay, well, it's valuable and I'm going to keep making it more valuable. And there might be some people that disagree. And if they do, what you want to do is not dismiss them, but find out why they think it's not valuable. Again, it's a speaking thing. So find out why they don't think it's valuable. And if they have a valid point, then you address it. If they don't, then, you know, put it aside and then move forward. So again, it's all about just removing that self-doubt and moving forward. It's natural to have self-doubt, but it's just to say, you know, I can do this. It's not uncommon. And I tell people, I call it the flare, and I'll cut it short. I won't make it long-winded. So, you know, when you learn to fly, there's this thing called the flare. So when you come into land, it's like you basically pull the power and it looks like the plane's gonna crash. And a few feet off the ground, there's something called ground effect, or if you pull your nose up, the plane will start floating a few feet off the ground. But before it starts floating, it looks like you're just gonna slam into the ground. And so your flight instructor will keep telling you, trust your flare, meaning right now it looks like it's falling, but when you pull your nose up slightly, it's gonna float, right? Which the translation there is, you're gonna face challenges and you're gonna feel doubt that, hey, I don't think I can do this, but trust that if you follow through, it will happen, and whatever you're doing is valuable. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. One person from our club wrote, how many hours a day do you work on average?
That's a tough question. So I'll give you the typical Kofi answer, which is 24 hours a day. That's because we all tend to, and I know where it comes from, which is you have to have rest and you have to have, you know, this and that. But when you become an entrepreneur, there's not that fine line between your working, your home, right? So, you know, I could be here and decide to go home and go hang out with the kids, or I could be hanging out with the kids and I have an idea and I have to just leave them and go write it down. So it's just about, don't think of it more as when I say hard work, there's a qualitative nature to it, right? It's not just the number of hours you put in, it's the quality of the hours you put in, right? So there's certain things that require a ton of hours to do. There's certain things that just require just the right level of thinking and only a few hours. But to be more direct, so there are times when I'll work 3 hours a day because I get to a point where there's nothing productive to be done. And then there are times where I'll work 12 hours a day, right? It just depends on, it's okay if on Saturday you want to go play football or basketball with your buddies, right? It doesn't mean you have to give that up just to be doing this, because then you're gonna burn out. It's all about if there's, and also while you're playing basketball, it doesn't mean that you couldn't be thinking also about a solution for whatever it is you're trying to. So I don't know if I was overly convoluted, but does that answer your question?
Yes, that did.
Hmm.
All right. Let's see. So how do you generate new ideas pertaining to your business?
So remember the talk to people bit I mentioned? Yeah, so again, yeah, you're gonna say I just spend a lot of time on planes, but I do. I was on a flight. I was on a flight back from somewhere, I think it was Memphis or something, from a conference. I was sitting next to a gentleman, and I had always been thinking about different ways to do things. And again, he sat next to me on the plane. I started talking, and he started mentioning, yeah, I came from a customer visit, and we're having this problem. And I said, oh, well, what problem is that? And then he explained how he has these corporate customers and, you know, they were having trouble connecting to his platform. So I just said, oh, well, I think I can help you, right? And then again, so a lot of times it's not about sitting down and somehow the ideas coming into your head. It's more about talking to people, finding out what problems are existing, and finding a solution for that problem. Because you can come up with ideas that are great, but if there's not, in other words, you can create a nice hammer, but if there's no nail, the hammer is quite useless, isn't it? Right? So you have to basically talk to people and just listen as you're talking to people, listen for what problems they're expressing, right? Or what challenges they might be having, whatever it might be, and then be thinking, oh, can I have a solution for that, right? So if you're talking to a lot of your friends and they're saying, I'm at Stockton and I have trouble getting a haircut, well, there you go. They just gave you a problem. And then how might you solve that, right? So the answer is more looking, not more in here, but what's more around you and figuring out what problems are there, because ideas are more solutions for problems, right? And the way you get the solution is to identify the problem.
Thank you. I
Welcome.
got two more questions. One is, what has been your satisfying moment in business?
Wow, it's more of a continuum. So you have lots of, bad days and lots of good days. And so, but if I were to pick one, I think my company got acquired back in September. And so that was validation from somebody else that I want to buy your company because it's valuable. So I think if I were to pick one, that would be it.
Then lastly, what key activities would you recommend entrepreneurs to invest their time in?
That's a tough one. It just depends on what you're into, but this is an educational institution, so I'll say reading. I personally don't like reading, but reading is a good thing. If you don't like reading, get the audiobooks. But for your courses, by all means, read. It's a good thing, but just get the audiobooks about people that have solved some other problem, and just listen to them talk. Or if you like reading, by all means, read books from things. And then also, it goes back to talking to people. If you talk, not only do you build a network, but you learn things from them, and then you also learn what problems exist. So if you're in your community, besides the obvious, right? What problems exist in your community? And how do you know? Well, you know by talking to people, and not just talking to people that look like you or your same age or whatever. So because then you'll only learn what you already know because they're just like you, right? So you need to talk to people that are from a different socioeconomic or age group or whatever. So talk outside your circles. And as you speak with people as an entrepreneur, you're just going to learn where the problems are. There's certain problems that you're not going to have a solution for, but there are others where, based on your background, your interests, you will hear somebody say something, and then a week later you hear somebody else say it, and then you hear it the third time and you realize, okay, there's a problem here, and I think I can solve it, right? So everybody keeps talking about I'm at Stockton and I don't know where to get a haircut, and you realize, well, actually I have a solution for that, and then there you go.
Thank you so much. And from the behalf of ASO, we thank you as well.
Oh, thank you, Andy. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, great. I want to follow up, Kofi, with with the following question. Obviously, as a business school, we struggle trying to equip our students with the right set of soft skills, and some of them you alluded to. Being able to talk to people. Things like learning how to communicate, whether it's in writing or verbally, or those kinds of skills, analytical thinking skills, and so on and so forth. Talk to us for a minute about what you see as very critical skills that we as educators certainly should continue to work on trying to give our students before they graduate from the School of Business or the university in general, for that matter.
Yeah, so I think it would be, if I were to pick one thing, it'd be more, you mentioned the word soft skills. So learning to just look beyond just the obvious, right? Just to see something and not take it for what it is, but look deeper. And it's basically, as for instance, if you're having a discussion, if they're having a discussion with somebody in a business setting or whatever setting, learning to just ask probing questions or questions that get them answers deeper than what just one-on-one back and forth would give them. So if we're having a conversation, it's all about, you said A, but what do you mean? Is it, A1 or A2 or whatever? So just ask questions and ask follow-on questions, and just by all means don't think just what's in the book, because what's in the books are just sort of, as you guys know, it's a framework, right, where the school wants to teach you how to do X, but you can't put the world of things in a book, right? Because it's just infinite, right? So the book and the school can only give you this much. Then it's up to the students to then, license to learn, right? Go out and ask more questions and ask more probing questions of people. And so your direct question was, how would educators help solve that? I think probably doing what you're doing today, having this type of session, right? It gives folks like myself the chance to sit with somebody like Andy, and I don't see the others, but I assume they're behind that black wall. Talk to them about just talking to people, right? Just networking with people. And if you meet somebody somewhere and you shake their hand, assuming COVID is over, you shake their hand, you don't just get a business card, but you ask them questions about what they do and what kind of work they do, and also what kind of, and people, you'll be surprised, what you learn when you ask somebody what kind of challenges is your department trying to solve, and they'll just open up and tell you because it's on their mind. So I think those are some of the key things. But the simplest, lowest hanging fruit would be, obviously beyond Black History Month, just having sessions like this where people get to interact with folks that are in industry, right? Because I know when I went to school, the first time I got to interact with industry was when I went for an interview, right? Which then it's, oh, wow, I'm going to this big building in New York and I'm going to meet with business people. But prior to that, there were a few of us that were lucky enough to get, not me, but others that got internships. And so, but those were exceptions, or people that had connections or whatever. But so giving the students the opportunity to interact with business people goes a long way. And with business people, it's not just corporate business people. So if they spent a weekend at that might be something to why I keep coming to the example of a barbershop, seeing as I don't have any hair, but it's if students were to spend a weekend trying to listen to an issue, so business students trying to listen to an issue a barbershop is having or a local restaurant is having, and then coming back and trying to figure out an innovative way to solve just that one problem. The barber says, well, I'm having trouble getting customers. Well, is it that the students are more savvy with social media and they can do something to help that barber or whatever? So things like that, just interacting with business leaders or business people, big or small, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, great. You mentioned, and Tara, are we okay with time? Am I okay with questions?
You are okay with time. We do not have any questions as of right now, but I know Esther did put a comment. Please, if anybody does have them, please put them in the Q&A. We'll be happy to answer those.
Okay. There was something you said earlier, Kofi. I think we started this before the program officially got started, which was the overseas experience that you've had growing up. And so, we are trying to give our students various opportunities to experience the world, experience new cultures, experience different people. Today we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in many ways, some of that can be achieved through exposures to foreign cultures, So speak a little bit about what you see as potential values of that encounter, study abroad or international
Yes.
engagements.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, I'm a prime, example of, just the benefits of study abroad. I think whether it's them coming here, us going there, it's all about going to a new culture and learning how they deal with things differently, not, and the key word is differently, not better or worse, right? How they solve problems differently than yourselves. And that gives you just different pathways to solving problems. So I think giving students the opportunity to go and study abroad for however long. Number one is it's quite fun. In most places that you go, there's a fun component to it, which is important. But then you learn a lot of things that people are doing differently. They're solving problems differently. And there might be certain things you learn that you can then come back home and transfer that knowledge to what you're doing today. And then oftentimes you can learn leadership skills by, being in a different environment as well. People there wherever that might be, might also be coming in and asking you, to share knowledge about something that they perceive, better because you're from the States. Believe it or not, what I've found is people asking me questions helps me grow, because then stuff that's buried deep in my head comes forward because somebody just posed that question and it just came out. And so I think going abroad, and of course post COVID, when COVID's over and we've all, have the nice vaccine. The way I'll give it a plug, it wasn't in the list, but if you get the opportunity to, by all means, get a vaccine and keep us all safe. But traveling abroad, I think, is an excellent way to learn. It looks like there's a question in the Q&A.
Yeah. Yep.
Actually, there's a couple if you want to read that. Yeah.
I'll read you the first one here. You may touch a little bit on some of this, but when starting the path of becoming an entrepreneur, what's the best advice you can give? And what are some things that you wish you knew?
So what are the best advice you can give and what are the things you wish you knew? All right, so I'll take that backwards because it's easier. I wish I knew how much money it would take to run a business, right? Because you go in really naive. It's, oh, hey, I have this thing and I'm going to go. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. So actually I have to support myself. And at that point, my family as well, financially while you do this. So it's all about just having the right expectations going in and making sure that you're financially ready and making sure that you can make those financial sacrifices, because a lot of times you will have to give up, things that you're comfortable having today, because you're going to have to invest some of that money into the business. And as far as the best advice, the best advice is to just do your research before you jump into any kind of business, because in today's environment, it's very easy. Andy or anyone, you can go out today and register a business with the government and get a tax ID and get a website and whatever. So it's very easy, and even there's a lot of room, and go rent some space. So it's very easy to set up the infrastructure because we're in the internet age. The tougher part is whatever it is you're selling, is there a market for it? Because if there isn't, you're going to waste a lot of time and money setting up this nice, pretty business that nobody wants, right? So the trick is to move cautiously, not just go 100%, 100 miles an hour. Move forward cautiously and make sure that whatever business you're getting into, you've done the research and you know that there's a market for it. And even when you know there's a market for it, make small, tiny, incremental changes, right? Because if I make an incremental change here, small, and it's wrong, I can make a small change back. If I make a big change this way, I can't come back because I just spent all my money making that big change here. Now I'm done and game over, right? So not big changes, very small corrections. If you find that you're having to make big, huge corrections, you're doing the wrong thing, right? You're going down the road. So then you need to step back and figure out through research exactly what direction you need to go. Now, if you find that you're making very small incremental changes, then that's you're on the right path.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
How did the challenges of COVID change the business environment, especially for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so it depends on who the entrepreneur is. So I have a friend of mine who has a Ghanaian restaurant just down the street from where I'm sitting. And for restaurants, it's been a challenge because for obvious reasons, right? People cannot come in, so they're having to do takeout and it's not working that well. And so for certain businesses, it's been a challenge because, and again, he has a restaurant in a business district. I happen to be in the office today because I'm the only one here, but most people don't come in here. So if you don't come into this office, you're not going across the street to the restaurant. And so they're struggling. There are other businesses sort of like myself that we do electronic payments. So guess what? If you're not in the office, you can't cut a check, right? So then you want to use electronic payments. So then it's, for us, it works well. So again, it all depends on, the industry you're in. Another example is if you're an airline, you're struggling because no one is flying, right? But if you're Uber Eats, you're doing well because everybody's sitting at home, just doing Uber Eats or Amazon or something like that. So unfortunately, it's been a split where some businesses have done very well and some businesses have not. I'd like to sit here and tell you that I had this foresight that this was going to happen and that's why I did this business, but I'd be lying to you. It's just a function of electronic payments was what I thought was useful, but then this escalated it because now everybody's sitting at home.
Great, thank you. So for everybody's knowledge, do you have a LinkedIn account that they can connect with you on?
Yeah, just look for Kofi Kondo. I can just post a link here in a second or so.
Okay.
But if you just look for my name, it should be there.
Great, awesome, thank you. Our next question here, besides talking to people and reading, how else do you research demand for a product or solution?
So there's the inexpensive way, and there's of course, if you have tons of money, then you hire a market research company and they go out and do what market research companies do. Most of us starting out don't have that. So then you're really left with going out and observing and talking to people, because you're either doing that or you're hiring market research people who cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's what Coca-Cola will do just to create a new, taste, right? But you can get there if you're, more cost effectively if you go out. You're on the internet searching for what people are asking for. You're out talking, and it takes doing some uncomfortable things. Some people don't like some strangers walking up to them asking them questions, and you have to be prepared for that. But short of hiring a market research company, the best way, or the only way that I'm aware of, is to just go out and talk to people and just observe and talk to people and listen. And people will tell you. If nobody's talking about it, it probably isn't a problem, right? Because if it's a problem, they'll tend to talk about it. When you're on social media, don't just be there for fun. Let's just observe what people are talking about, right? And observe what problems people are, just expressing. And some of it may be obvious, some of it may be subtle, and then that's how you find your solution. And a lot of times the answer isn't, I'm in the software business, so obviously I create software, but the answer isn't always coming up with some new product that nobody has, right? Sometimes it's this is Aquafina problem was people having portable water. They didn't invent plastic, nor did they invent water, right? They just put the two together and you have a product. So don't always think of a lot of, and even I had that notion before that you always had to create some net new product that from things that don't exist. Those days are sort of short and far in between. Nowadays, it's mostly just taking things that already exist, like water that's been there since forever, and then plastic, putting it together. And this is a product, right? The packaging of water and plastic. Now you have a portable product, and none of it you invented, but there you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Looks like we are approaching that hour, right? That moment. Kofi, I guess as we wrap up, I just want to give you the chance to, share your closing thoughts. As we wrap up the Black History Month event here at Stockton, and just this is an opportunity for you to speak to our students and anybody
Yeah,
else.
no, excellent. And by all means, Esther, Tara, Alfonso, Andy, it's been a pleasure being with you. Obviously, appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys. I wish I were sitting out there in Atlantic City. I spent my teen years in New York City, so we would go over to the boardwalk quite often. So I'm familiar with that area, often unbeknownst to our parents, but that's a different story. But it's been a pleasure. The one message that I will leave you with is just the three things, right? Of course, education, and you're already doing that because you're in university. And then innovation and perseverance, right? And innovation isn't always creating an iPhone. It's just taking, two things that already exist, three things that already exist, putting it together and moving forward. So always just be on the lookout for something. Just never switch off. I know somebody asked a question about, how many hours you work. It's more about the qualitative nature of it. So when you're out there as a business person, and if you're in a business school, that's what you are. Go out there and your job is to solve problems that people have, quite simply, right? And the only way you know what the problem is to observe it or ask and be told it, right? Or hear it, right? So you have to just perceive it with your senses, see it, hear it, or in some cases smell it if that's the issue. But basically make sure that you're out there all the time, just staying engaged, observing what people are doing, listening to what people are saying. Folks of that generation, folks of that generation really live on social media, and it's actually easier to observe on social media. So just spend less time posting and more time consuming what others are posting. And then you can sort of see, gathering all that data, you can sort of see a trend of what people are talking about, what issues they're facing, and how you might solve it. But regardless of what you do, make incremental changes, as I mentioned, but regardless of what you do, just quitting just shouldn't be in your lingo. It should be all about moving forward in a positive way. And no one got to where you didn't get to the university by quitting in high school or even before that, right? So same thing that got you here, the same thing will get you to the next level. Just look for my name, Kofi Kandwar, Regal Software. I should pop up on LinkedIn. I've got several posts out there. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. And again, it's been a pleasure. I wish I could be there in person, but we'll do it one of these days when COVID is over, and get that vaccine if you get a chance. And it's been a pleasure.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Kofi. I want to thank you again, Kofi, on behalf of the faculty, the staff, the students, and Stockton University. But I also want to thank my colleagues, Tara Mash, and Esther Lawrence. They worked incredibly hard over these last several weeks to put together what to me has been a great Black History Month celebration in the School of Business. And for the interest of the audience, I'm pleased to announce and let you all know that Mr. Kondua has accepted the invitation from Dr. Kesselman to be a founding member of the School of Business Dean's Executive Advisory Board. So thank you, Kofi. Appreciate that. Look forward
I
to
didn't hear what the salary was.
No, we'll just let that one slide. Okay. So
Yeah, I forgot to mention always be negotiating, right?
yeah, absolutely. So thank you folks for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again and at our next event. So everybody be safe. And like Kofi said, get your shot when you can, right?
Yep. And I don't know if the panelists can see it or everyone can see it. Okay, I can switch it to a 10. So I just posted my LinkedIn profile there.
Yep, we can see
Want
it.
to grab it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, all right.
Thanks,
care.
everyone. Thank you,
Bye,
Kofi.
everyone.
Take
Okay,
care.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Tara.
Oh, do you want me to stop recording?
Uh-huh.
Yes.